Hey there, folks. So, what is a dialect? What is dialect work or dialect coaching? It's simple stuff, really. Okay, well, not really, actually, but we'll make it simple. Dialect work is learning how to speak with a dialect or accent. First off, the difference between a dialect and an accent is largely semantic. They're kind of the same thing, but most North American dialect coaches make a distinction between an English language dialect and a foreign language accent. So, in short, an accent is more like a mispronunciation of English, and a dialect is a commonly accepted pronunciation, at least in the region where the dialect originates. For example, if you happen to say y'all instead of you all, that's a common characteristic of many Southern dialects. That's Southern United States, by the way. Although, to be fair, y'all is becoming an accepted contraction pretty much everywhere. So maybe that's not the best example. How about this? If you are from Alabama, you probably say win the same exact way that you say win. You'd say they were homophones. Same pronunciation, different meaning. When in fact, in the general American dialect, win is win, and win is when. Get it? Win, when. But it's a perfectly normal, perfectly acceptable pronunciation in that region. It isn't a mispronunciation. It's correct within that dialect. In fact, a lot of Alabamians, would probably look at you funny if you said when. So, when in Rome. On the other side of things, you might have an accent. Say that you're from Germany and English is your second language. You've been speaking English for quite a while, but there are still some sounds that you don't always get quite right. We'd say you have an accent. For example, if somebody asks you, "How many are there?" and you reply, "There's a lot." With a German accent, you might say, "There's a lot." Now, there are a number of things I could point out about that phrase as a dialect coach, but let's just choose one. Probably the most obvious is the dentalization of der. You might say the TH as D if we're talking American alphabet, because you aren't as familiar with that sound as it's written, and it's hard for you to get the hang of. Now, the fun thing about accents, and dialects too, is that they aren't the most consistent things in the world. Not all Germans would say that phrase like I said it. In fact, some of you that are German are like, "What? We don't talk like that." As a matter of fact, very few would say it exactly like I did, perhaps none, because when speaking another language, sometimes you might get it right and sometimes you might not. After all, we're only human, and as ESL speakers, that's English as a second language, sometimes we forget how to pronounce something, and sometimes we remember. But also for those of us that speak with English dialects, sometimes our dialect may be stronger or weaker, depending on the situation. Who we're with, what setting we're in. That's called code switching, by the way. When you talk freely with a heavy dialect at home, but more proper, whatever that means, when you're around teachers at school or your boss at work. And then sometimes our mouths just do funny things. And don't forget, most of us aren't isolated creatures. We don't just live in the same house and putt around the same neighborhood all our lives. We travel, we move, visit other places, and we pick things up along the way. So our dialect can change. It can morph based on the sounds we hear around us. So even if you do live in the same old house in that little West Texas neighborhood your whole life, what happens when that fast-talking New Yorker moves in next door and you become best friends? Well, I'll tell you, your consistency might fade. You just might pick up some new sounds, and that's not a bad thing. So in that way, accents and dialects for acting, whether it's for the stage or the screen, can be really creative. Now, I could go on about this forever, but just remember, for an actor, accent and dialect always comes back to the circumstances of the character. There is no such thing as a perfect German accent, or French, or what have you. Now, as to why you would need to speak with another dialect or accent, well, character. As an actor, you're playing characters, people who may not share your voice, your history, and you have to play the circumstances of the character, including their dialect. So sometimes it's necessary in order to represent them accurately. There's also a lot we could explore within this topic, like who wore it better, an American playing a Brit or a Brit playing an American? Or when is it okay to use an accent or dialect and when is it not socially acceptable? But we could do a whole class on that too. In fact, we probably will, so stay tuned. But for now, that's what dialect and accent work is. Oh, and by the way, a dialect coach is someone who coaches dialects. What do you know? I do that. So if you have a part coming up in an Oscar Wilde play, or maybe just want to lessen your regional dialect or foreign accent for business or pleasure, I'm here. Just give me a call. Thanks for watching. Until next time.